This is the BMW F900XR, their tall sports tourer that's been updated for 2025 with some nice little enhancements all across the bike. Thing is though, this particular part of the market is really quite competitive with some really good options like the Tracer 9 from Yamaha and also the peppy new kid on the block in the form of the Triumph Tiger Sport 800. So have BMW actually done enough with these tweaks to make it still worthy of your consideration, or has the market simply moved on? Well, in this video, we'll take it out for a spin so I can tell you everything I've found out about this bike, both good and bad, from the past few weeks of borrowing it. But before we get on the road, a massive thanks to Chigee for supporting the channel and making free-to-view videos like this one possible. On the F900XR press bike that we've got today, I've got their latest AIO-6 system fitted, which gives you all sorts of techie features in one neat and easy to install package. The hub of the system really is the colour touchscreen, which you can either use to view the dash cams front and rear, or Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for your favourite apps, or you can even connect to the bike with their OBD adapter to get the key riding information like speed or revs, so you can basically use it as like a secondary dash. Then you've got blind spot warnings from that rear-facing camera, GPS so you can use it as a tracker, and also some other neat extras like their TPMS accessory. So look, it's a brilliant way to refresh an older bike with some of the latest conveniences, but also a fantastic way to enhance a new bike like this F900XR. So do check out the link down in the description below to find out more, and you'll also find down there a couple of discount codes specifically for our viewers. So once again, a huge thanks to Chigee for their support. So let's kick off with the engine, which is the 895cc parallel twin. That's the same as you'll find in the F900R Naked and also the F900GS Adventure bike. Now it's about 105 horsepower peak and 93 newton meters of peak torque. So exactly the same as the previous iteration of this bike. And I think really the only changes they've made are to make it comply with the latest emissions regulations. Still, there's plenty good about it carried over, like the sort of general sound and feel of it, which I quite like. The 270-degree crank gives it that snarl that's always enjoyable, but also there's plenty of bass and depth to the induction sound, and so it has this sort of fairly substantial feel, which I think is good. New for 2025, they've tweaked the dynamic riding mode, but they've given it a more aggressive throttle map, which is very welcome indeed. It just gives it a bit more snap and punch, lowering the rev range, and you can really feel the benefits of that healthy torque figure. It's got a good, usable amount of shove down low in the rev range, and it also continues quite nicely into the mid-range as well. Yep, definitely got some guts to it, but also at the same time it is fairly economical. 4-ish litres per 100 kilometres travelled, and so despite the fact that it's not a massive tank, 15.5 litres, you can still get a decent 150 miles out of it, which I think is realistically enough for the majority of riders. I'd also put the quick shifter as well as a pro of the engine. Feels tight and like it's well put together. I like the sound of the auto blip as well when you downshift. That's always entertaining. And so although it's another optional accessory, I do rather enjoy using it. Maybe worth looking into the dynamic pack to get that extra riding mode and the quick shifter, which I think both are part of. If I had to mark the engine down for anything, well, this won't come as a surprise if you saw my review of the F900R Naked, but it's the sort of sporty side of things where it doesn't feel that lively or exciting in the sort of upper part of the rev range. Like I say, it goes up against the Tracer 9 and the new Tiger Sport 800 from Triumph. Both of those probably rev up a little more freely. Just, I guess, with them being triples, they feel a little happier to rev. But also, they both make more peak power at the top. And this just doesn't really have that kind of daft side that I really enjoyed on the Tiger Sport, for example. As for the handling, well, they've made a couple of nice little improvements to the chassis for this year, like the lighter wheels, which of course are going to help with that sense of agility, and also they've given it an adjustable fork, whereas the previous generation, I think I'm right in saying, was non-adjustable. On top of that, I mean, it's the same as the previous generation, but this particular press bike is fitted with the dynamic ESA pack, which gives you an electric shock, or electronic shock should I say, and that means you can choose between a couple of modes, so road, which is a little softer, and dynamic, which is a bit more sporty, and of course it's trying to give you the best possible response in real time to the given riding conditions. That's definitely one of the things I've enjoyed about this bike for the past couple of weeks. You know, this sort of category of bike should be versatile, and I do think that's the case, enhanced by the fact that there's a nice amount of contrast, let's say, between the road and the dynamic mode. Road does really feel quite cushy, perfect for cruising along on the motorway, but when you do start to ride a bit quicker, it potentially feels a bit bouncy, and so the dynamic mode does step in and firms things up and, you know, makes them more appropriate for that quicker stuff. I'd say as well it's a nice planted and stable bike. I like the fact that it's got the steering damper. It feels reassuring at speed on the motorway, where some bikes can start to wag their heads a bit. And yet at the same time as being sort of substantial and feeling like it's, you know, solid on the road, well, it's not actually a heavy bike. It comes in, I think, at 216 kilograms curb. And so it really is, you know, intuitive and easy to ride when you do peel off a motorway and come onto some, you know, twistier stuff. I wouldn't say it's quite as sporty as the Tiger Sport, potentially not so much as the Tracer either, but specifically the Tiger, I remember feeling maybe more flickable. But in terms of being a balanced all-rounder, well, it is set up very nicely to do the job it's meant to do. The only area in which I wish it had a little more would be the braking, which looks like it should be decent. You know, you've got the 4-pot radial calipers up front, twin discs, and generally decent hardware, but it just feels a little bit soft on the lever, and especially this rear brake pedal. There's so much travel in it and so much mushiness that it doesn't feel very reassuring when it comes to stopping quickly. Now, you might argue that slightly soft brakes could be viewed as a bit of an advantage if you're riding 2-up, for example, and you've got a lot of luggage on. To be nice and controlled with them and gradual can definitely be a good thing, but it's just when you get to these like quicker bits of road, yeah, that you might want a bit more bite and immediacy to give it that sporty feel. Now, of course, with this sort of bike, comfort is a massively important factor, and I think that is one of the areas in which I'm most impressed with this bike. It's got that tallness, it's got that spaciousness that you'd expect, but at 820mm in the seat, it doesn't feel particularly ungainly or unmanageable. On top of that, you've got plenty of options in terms of accessories to modify the seat height, and so I'm fairly confident that most riders should be able to find something that suits them. The only thing I'd potentially change about the saddle is the size of this step, because if you do want to get your bum back to get down and a bit more sporty, then it doesn't really accommodate that. It really is quite supportive, and that can be a good thing in some ways, but there isn't a lot of room to slide back and forth. But other than that, I found it really comfortable, and actually for the majority of riding, this very upright riding position is spot on. More important than any of that though for me is the wind protection, which I think they've done a fantastic job of on this 2025 update. They say they've changed the screen in order to minimize buffeting around the rider, and at 5'9" or 175 centimeters with this screen in its highest position, I've got to say it's one of the best bikes I've tested this year. Sometimes windscreens generate so much of that buffety, bassy turbulence that I'd honestly rather have a naked bike a lot of the time, because you just get a clean flow of air that doesn't knock you around and give you that really fatigued feeling when you get off the motorway. This though, well, it's not perfectly quiet. I don't think any bike is, but it's the fact that it doesn't really kick you around. It just seems consistent even with the screen fairly high up, and even when you're reaching those higher speeds on the motorway. So definitely a massive strength of this bike for me that has made it really enjoyable to use for some of those longer days out. Now I think BMW are probably one of the best when it comes to technology and the way that they design the interfaces and lay out the buttons, and this bike is every bit as good as most of the other bikes in their lineup. It's a familiar dash, a familiar set of interfaces. It's familiar switchgear as well. You've got the jog wheel, you've got some of the same buttons as, well, most bikes in their lineup. And so it feels super intuitive to me and easy to use. And yeah, I just think the dash looks cool as well. They've got the right fonts and, you know, graphics to make it feel premium and sporty while still retaining that ease of use, which is realistically the most important thing. Like I say, you've got 3 riding modes. You've got ABS Pro, you've got your traction control, you've got the option to upgrade to the dynamic pack to get that extra riding mode and a couple of other settings. And you've also got a couple of nice touring conveniences as standard now, like the heated grips and Headlight Pro, which is adaptive, so it's kind of cornering sensitive, which is definitely handy if you're thinking of commuting, for example, where you probably will be coming home in the dark during the winter. As for the cons, well, one thing would potentially be the cruise control, which I think is essential for a bike of this intended purpose, which is actually an optional extra, whereas it's standard fit on the Tracer and standard fit on the Triumph. I think it's 360 quid on this bike. The quick shifter as well, I think, is standard fit on the Triumph at least, whereas you're gonna have to pay a bit extra on this bike. And so, well, it might have been nice if they could have bundled those in, because I'd at least consider the cruise control to be an essential when it comes to a touring bike, or at least what's partially a touring bike. Woo! Now, looks-wise, I wouldn't say it's a particular strength of this bike, nor would I say it's a disadvantage either. It's just, for me anyway, somewhere in the middle. Especially in this black finish. It's just kind of classy, let's say, and understated, but it's not going to turn any heads realistically. And so, yeah, if you're looking for something that just flies under the radar a bit, it kind of does that. I do quite like the front end though. When you've got the headlights switched on, it has a bit of the look of its larger sibling in the S1000XR, but otherwise I'd say it's yeah, it's just fine, and maybe that's fine for you. Versus the other bikes on the market as well, I mean, certainly the more techie Tracer 9s, they're not great looking either, so I'd probably choose this over that. And the Tiger Sport, maybe slightly better looking than this, but it's not exactly a dream poster bike either. And so, yeah, it's not like it's up against particularly stiff competition on the looks. So, yeah, probably totally fine. I think it could probably be enhanced by going for the red version, or that more sporty red, white and blue. And so maybe factor in the cost of that one if you want one of the more interesting looking variants. Now, as for the price on this bike, well, it comes in at about £11,000, and that's the same for all of the competition that we've been talking about through this video. You can get a Tiger Sport, for example, for just under 11 grand, and while the Tracer 9, you can go up through various levels of spec and it gets quite expensive, the base model is comparable to these other two bikes, and so you've got to say it's a relatively level playing field in that regard. And so is there any reason, price aside, to choose this one over the others? Well, I'd probably say that if you're really into your sporty riding and you're looking for something that's comfortable but still has that kind of dynamic side to it, then probably this out of the bunch is the least strong. I think it's really the engine, it's just not as exciting in the top half of the rev range. And so unless they, substantially re-engineered it, that's pretty much always going to be the case, regardless of what they tweak on the rest of the bike. Where I do think it really does come up strong though, is more so with that distance work and touring riding and perhaps the more practical side of things like commuting. Personally, wind protection and lack of turbulence is one of the most important things when I'm looking at doing a long ride. And so realistically, if I was faced with a significant slog on the motorway and I had these three bikes to choose from, I think 9 times out of 10, I'd go for this bike purely because it's really quite clean in terms of the airflow. It's nice and stable on the motorway, the economy's decent as well. There's enough power there to get you up to 70 and beyond. Technologically, it's got pretty much everything you need as well to make that sort of riding achievable. And so yeah, that's definitely where I see this bike as standing apart from the others in the market. So if that's your sort of riding, you're looking at one of these three bikes, but it looks like the majority of your riding is going to be distance work, then I'd absolutely recommend taking one of these for a demo. As always, I'd love to know what you think of the bike, so do let me know down in the comments below. And I'll also leave our review of the F900R Naked equivalent on the screen now so you can give it a watch in case you missed it. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll catch you in the next video.